So tonight, hi Marianne. Tonight, our discussion is going to be about what is the best way of eating? Is there actually a best way of eating to improve my health, to help me to lose weight, to help me to um, alleviate my mental struggles, my anxiety, my depression? Is there a best way for me to maintain bone health? Is there a best way for me to eat? Is it's a constant. Everybody has the best way of eating. And if you don't eat this way, well, you're doing the wrong thing. And I am here to tell you that that is straight garbage. Okay. There is no one best way of eating for everybody. Every body is different. So everybody who approaches a lifetime of, improving their health, a lifestyle change that involves changing their way of eating is going to be different. And guess what? It is not going to stay the same as when you first started. Weight loss, fat loss, health, it is not a linear journey. It actually does all sorts of crazy things. It has ups and downs. It has curly cues. It has flat lines for an extended period of time. There is no one best way of eating, no matter what other influencers or coaches or admins of groups that are giving awful advice will tell you. Okay. I have had a just it's been a really disturbing thing to witness being in these groups that are based on particular ways of eating and seeing the, pardon my French, the shitty advice that is being given to the women, because these are all women's groups. These women are being given this advice that is just not safe. It is not healthy. It is reinforcing the diet culture that so many of us grew up with in the 80s and the 90s, because they're saying the best way for you to lose weight is to reduce your calories to an insanely low amount. You know, the CICO crowd, the calories in, calories out. They always say CICO bros, right? That it's all about calories in and it's all about calories out. Calories are the main thing to focus on. And when you are telling a woman who is aged 40 to 45 and older to eat less than 1,200 calories a day, that is, if it were malpractice, because of a particular practitioner, I would say it's that. But you have nutritionists who are running these groups and telling these admins the things to say, which are just going to do nothing but damage people. I had somebody say on there the other day that there's no such thing as destroying metabolism. There's no such thing as slowing down metabolism. You want to tell a woman over the age of 50 or 60 that there's no such thing as a slowing metabolism? Your metabolism slowing is a natural part of life. It is part of getting older. It is proven to be true. So for these ladies to be telling other women who are, age 30 plus that no, you can't destroy your metabolism. Go ahead and eat 1,000 calories a day because that's fine. That's how you're going to lose weight. That's how you're going to get skinny. That's how you're going to have ketones that are, 5.0, and that's going to be able, that's going to cure everything in your life. That's not true. It's not necessary. And this kind of information being spread by others is really disheartening to a lot of women because we get sucked into this is the way to do it. This is the easy way to do it. This is the way that it's going to work. And you can't say that because you don't know. I do not treat any of my clients the same. I have every single one of them on different macros. I have every single one of them on different workout plans. I have every single one of them consuming different types of foods. It's not just one size fits all. It's not a cookie cutter process. So tonight I want to kind of go over the various types of low carb diets. It's low carb keto is a spectrum. And that post that I made said that, basically keto is a bad word anymore. It's been so bastardized by marketing because they slap the word keto on a product and people automatically think that that means it's healthy. Oh, I should be eating this because it's good for me. I should be eating this because it says keto on it, and keto is the way that I'm going to lose weight the fastest. So, we're going to go over some of that, just kind of dispel some myths, and just I'm going to explain to you a little bit more about what is the best way to go about changing your way of eating or continuing on with your way of eating. So, with that, let's go ahead and get started. So I like to always start with like our danger zone, our standard American diet, the really scary way that most of us in the United States live, and that is what is referred to as the standard American diet, or as very appropriately SAD, SAD. And that is people who are consuming 300 plus grams of carbohydrates a day. I'm going to focus on carbs right now as we go through these kind of definitions of the different types of diets or ways of eating, and then we'll get into other macronutrients that are involved with these things. But for the most part, carbohydrates is what you want to look at when you see what is it that I am eating? How much am I eating? Because there are some areas that are very scary. Those are the things that will make us extremely sick. Yes, seed oils are a part of that. They're a huge part of it. But processed, ultra processed foods are not good for anyone. You shouldn't be eating them as an adult. You sure as hell shouldn't be feeding them to children because it's going to lead to health issues down the line. It's frightening to see that there is such an increase in children that are 6 years old who are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Age 6, not type 1, type 2. That is from insulin resistance. Most people who develop type 2 diabetes are in their late 30s to 40s. That's usually when it starts to present itself. And that's from primarily a lifetime of eating not in the best way, creating the insulin resistance to the point where your pancreas is just like, I can't spit out enough insulin to counteract all of the sugar that you're putting in my body. So now you have to add more insulin to your bloodstream to help counteract all these carbohydrates that you're consuming. There are children as young as 6. The amount of children, the age, I believe it's 10 or 12, has doubled in 10 years. That is type 2 diabetes. That is purely diet, lifestyle, movement. That's what that's caused. So you think about eating 300 grams of carbs a day, and imagine a child eating that, if not that, possibly even more. Oh, and it looks like my internet's going a little bit crazy. Sorry about that, guys. So, oops. So 300 grams of carbs a day and up is what we refer to as the danger zone. It's lots of processed sugars, lots of sodas, sugary sodas. It's just lots of grains, lots of pastas, things like that that are a little bit more inflammatory and that will cause the insulin production in our bodies to really get ramped up to try and calm things down because our bodies don't necessarily like all of this sugar in our systems. You hear people say all the time, oh, our bodies run off of sugar. Actually, our bodies and our brains prefer to run off of ketones, which are released from fat cells as we are eliminating fat or consuming fat and utilizing that as fuel as opposed to a sugar. So that's something that's off from a lot of people. That's what a lot of nutritionists will teach people. That's what a lot of doctors will say. And these guys, I'm not knocking physicians who don't know nutrition, but the average physician gets 15 to 18 hours of nutrition in 4 years of medical school. It is the smallest amount of education and knowledge that they receive when they're in medical school. So it's not necessarily their fault. They're just doing what's in the book, what they're taught. And that's what they tell their patients. And those doctors are starting to come around and see that, you know what, maybe this information isn't completely accurate. Maybe it's actually something else. So so yeah, 300 more grams a day. If you are in that danger zone there, you want to get out of it as soon as you can because you're not doing yourself any favors. And even taking the task of lowering those carbohydrates, cutting them in half. We won't even say let's go down to, 20, 30, 40 grams of carbs. Let's say let's go to 150 to 300 grams of carbohydrates per day. Let's try that, because doing that is going to limit the amount of insulin that's being released into your body. And the continuous insulin stimulating, effects our metabolism. Yes, it does affect our metabolism. And it also adds to the health conditions, the chronic health conditions that so many of us end up with. And I say so many of us because I had so many metabolic disorders happening with me when I finally decided that I was done, sick and tired of being sick and tired, essentially. So when you're looking at cutting your carbohydrates, let's start at, let's go from 150 to 300. That's, it's still steady weight gain. But if you are consuming over 300 calories a day, going down to 150 to 300 is actually going to show some improvements. And then it makes it easier to cut what you're consuming down to low carb. Okay. So low carb is anywhere from 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrates a day. It's maintenance for a lot of people that have lost the fat that they're looking to lose, that are continuing to work towards their fitness, who are strength training, hitting my microphone, who are active. They're active in their daily lives. They don't live a sedentary lifestyle. They don't have sedentary jobs, or if they do, they're out moving a lot after work, before work, on the weekends, so on and so forth. So 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrates a day is what is classified as low carb. Okay. So if you are doing that spread right there after having consumed, 300 plus grams of carbs a day on the standard American diet, you're definitely going to see some weight loss happening. Fat loss happening is what we want. And if I say weight loss, understand I'm talking fat loss, because I don't want you hyper focusing on the scale and hyper focusing on weight being the primary goal, because weight can mean a number of things, especially for us women. Not only can it mean fat and inflammation, which we definitely want to get rid of, but it can also mean muscle. And as we are getting older, it can also mean bone. So seeing the scale go down as we age is not necessarily a positive thing. We want to make sure that we're maintaining muscle. We want to make sure we're maintaining our bone strength. And that means eating as healthy of a diet as possible, eating that whole food, the nutrient dense food, even if it means eating some carbohydrates. If we're eating upwards of 100 carbohydrates a day, that's not necessarily going to negatively affect you unless you are dealing with significant metabolic disorders, metabolic syndrome specifically. And there's multiple ways, multiple things online about what is metabolic syndrome. How do I know if I'm suffering from metabolic syndrome? It's one of those things where a lot of doctors kind of disagree about metabolic syndrome and what it will do to our bodies and how it negatively affects us. But there's no actual metabolic syndrome one thing. It's actually a combination of things. So it can be high blood pressure, it can be high waist circumference, it can be insulin resistance. That's what I had. And of course I've always had my little tummy happening since I was a little girl. Um, it can be I'm having a total brain fart now. I'll post a link in the comments so that you guys can look up what the symptoms are for metabolic syndrome, and you can look and see, hey, is this something that I might be suffering from and I don't even realize it? There's a good possibility. So, but the 100 to 150 gram range um, focuses a little bit more on animal foods, animal based foods, and fruits and vegetables, which that's, I'm all about primal living and eating things when they are in season. I don't necessarily eat berries during the winter, and I don't eat pumpkin in the summer because that's not when they're in season, but I focus on when things are in season. But you better believe I enjoy some berries in the summer because I make it amazing triple berry trifle that is a huge hit at every single barbecue we have. So, all right. 50 to 100 grams is basically like an ultra low carb, I guess you could say. So, 50 to 100 grams of carbohydrates a day, that is basically the sweet spot primally for you to be able to drop fat. It's what they refer to as effortless weight loss. It'll minimize the insulin production that your body is doing. It's going to accelerate your fat metabolism so that you are able to burn things off quicker within your body. And it supports being able to eat certain carbohydrates that are actually nutrient dense, that honestly primarily grow from the ground or they grow from a bush. It's not stuff like watermelons that are very, very full of sugar and they are very high on the glycemic index. You want lower glycemic index types of fruits that you're going to eat, which is why apples, pears, peaches, things like that, they're very, very sweet because they have a lot of sugar in them, as opposed to berries, which don't. But it'll also allow for you to consume nuts and seeds if you're able to. There are people who have IBS, Crohn's, colitis, things like that, that nuts and seeds are not good for them, and they have to be well aware of that. But also remember, nuts and seeds can lead to some pretty significant carb creep that people don't realize. When I first started doing this, I would go bonkers on cashews because, well, it's a nut. I can eat these. These are nuts. And I would actually end up with upwards of 50 to 60 grams of carbs a day because I was eating cashews, going bonkers eating cashews. Remember, I was still dealing with my binge eating disorder when I first started doing all this. So if I was able to eat something and, oh, it's good for me, it's going to help me lose fat, I would go ham on those things and not take a second thought about it because, oh, well, these are good for me, these are keto, this is what I'm able to do, this is what I'm allowed to eat. And it wasn't the case. So going from then, we've got 25 to 50 grams of carbohydrates a day, and that is what is basically referred to as keto. Some people who do keto go upwards of 100 grams of carbs, but keeping it below keto makes it an actual ketogenic way of eating. So that is for accelerated fat burning, essentially. You are cutting out every single ultra processed food. You're cutting out all grains. You're cutting out all seeds. You're cutting out all sugars. You're cutting out all of the inflammatory oils. And you're primarily eating animal fats, animal meats, not just ruminant meat, but you can have beef, lamb, pork, fish, poultry, whatever it is you like. And a lot of these keto influencers and people who direct people to eat on the ketogenic diet will tell them to consume more fat than protein, which I am not a fan of. Because, yeah, you do want to kickstart your fat loss. And by consuming higher amounts of fat, you do accelerate that fat burning and that fat adaptation. But it doesn't mean that you need to be eating 150 to 200 grams of fat each day. That is lunacy to me. I would eat higher fat meats. So I eat a lot of ribeye steak. I had higher fat ground beef, like 73/27, 80/20. That's usually the types of meats I would stick with. And the fattier steaks, if there was a barbecue joint that we were going to, I would eat all of the fat that was there as part of the meal that I had. But I didn't intentionally add a whole bunch of extra fat to my diet because that wasn't necessary for me. Number one, it caused me some pretty significant gastric distress because I don't have a gallbladder. My gallbladder was removed 7, almost 8 years ago. And there are times I will still have issues with it. But will I add a teaspoon of butter to my eggs? Yeah, because if I'm adding a teaspoon of butter to 3 or 4 eggs, that's not going to cause me a lot of issues. But sitting there and eating a stick of butter like a lot of influencers do, it's not necessary. It's really not necessary. So the carb restriction that happens when you get into the ketogenic way of eating is significant, but it's a necessity because we're trying to teach our bodies, okay, we're not going to rely on sugar anymore to get us through, to power us through the day, to power our muscles while we're doing this workout. We're trying to teach it to utilize the fat that's already stored on our body and use that for fuel, and also let our brains use the fat and the ketones that are produced from burning fat to keep us powered throughout the entire day. That's one thing that a lot of people who start keto will talk about is the clarity, the brain clarity that they seem to get from switching to keto. Sometimes they'll be very tired, and that is extremely common. Most of the time, that is due to lack of electrolytes. If you're not consuming electrolytes and not just salt, I'm talking sodium, magnesium, potassium. You need to make sure that you are supplementing with other sources of electrolytes because you're not getting those things from the carbohydrates that you had been eating on a regular basis when you were eating the standard American diet, or you were eating a little bit more carb heavy prior to trying a ketogenic way of eating. Do I believe keto and carnivore cure every single medical, health, mental, whatever condition in the world? No, I do not. I believe it helps a great deal, but it is not a cure all for everything that ails us in our lives. I started out doing keto and it did a lot of good for me. It got rid of my inflammation because I also stopped consuming seed oils. It got rid of my brain fog, my depression, my anxiety that I was just suffering so severely from back in 2020. And a lot of us were dealing with a lot of mental health issues back in 2020, but I was to the lowest point in my life. And that really turned around within probably the first 30 days of me doing keto and taking all of that other inflammatory stuff out of my diet. Um, then the chronic pain that I was experiencing within about 6 weeks or so, that was gone. I woke up one morning and I didn't have elbow pain, which I had been dealing with elbow pain for 6 months. I thought I had tendonitis in both of my elbows. I had foot pain all the time. I thought I had plantar fasciitis. I was convinced I had plantar fasciitis. I self diagnosed myself with it. My hips hurt. My knees hurt. Everything just freaking hurt. And once I started going more towards a ketogenic way of eating, guess what? Most of that stuff ended up resolving. So keto does help. It definitely did help me, but it was to an extent. And then I had to start tweaking what I did with my diet. And that's what I do with my clients as well. So, off that tangent, 20, sorry, 20 to 50 is basically a lot of people that are keto. That's where they try and keep, and that's total carbohydrates, not net carbs. And you see net carbs all the time on various products that have keto splashed all over them, or in tracking software. So if you use Chronometer, Carb Manager, MyFitnessPal, and there's a couple others out there, it'll give you the option to say, I want to track my net carbs or I want to track my total carbs. You want to track your total carbs. The carb creep, again, is very real. And when you go and you do net carbohydrates and you're like, oh, look, I stayed at 25 net carbs, I stayed at 25 carbs. Actually, you probably consumed upwards of 50 to 75 grams of total carbs, but they have you deduct fiber, they have you deduct sugar alcohols, because then they just add that stuff in so that you can mess around with the stuff. You can buy their products, not feel guilty about it because, well, I'm not exceeding my net carbs, so I'm good for the day. And that can lead to that carb creep coming into your diet as well. We've got the carnivore diet, which is generally 10 to 20 total grams of carbs a day. And if you're eating a carnivore diet, you are not eating any vegetables, you're not eating any sugar alcohols or consuming sugar alcohols, you're not having anything like that. How am I ending up with carbohydrates? Well, eggs have carbs, believe it or not. Eggs have carbohydrates. So, yeah, you will still have some carbs in your life, and that's okay because it's coming from a source that's basically 1-to-1 fat and protein. And probably, in my opinion, the most nutrient dense food you can eat, which is an egg. That's the true superfood right there. Forget kale. Let's eat more eggs. That's why I have chickens, so that I never run out of them. So, yeah, if you're doing between 10 and 20 grams total grams of carbs a day, that's basically going to classify you as a carnivore. It is only animal products that you are consuming. You're not having any sorts of vegetables or anything like that, and very limited amounts of seasonings, because, again, certain seasonings can contain carbohydrates. You don't know what it's going to be. Onions have certain types of fiber in them. So if you're getting onion powder and utilizing that, yeah, it can end up with some effects on you. If you're utilizing paprika and you have an issue with nightshades, well, guess what? Those are ground up bell peppers. So, yeah, you're going to potentially end up with some issues from that. And so, those are for people who are really trying to cut everything out, do kind of an elimination diet, and focus on animal products only. And then eventually, some of them will reintroduce certain things back into their diet, but others won't. They swear by staying away from anything that is not an animal product. And then basically 0 to 10 grams of carbohydrates a day is something that would be classified as like the lion diet. The lion diet is the most strict way of ketogenic eating that you can do. And that is only ruminant meats. So only animals who have multiple stomachs, cows, sheep. So lots of beef, lots of lamb. And I think goats have ruminant stomachs. And water and salt. That's it. That is a very, very strict way of eating that some people who have massive, horrific health issues do have to do. And that's okay. If that is the point that you have to get to in order to heal your body, then that's the point that you have to get to in order to heal your body. Is it for everybody? No, it's not. Is it necessary for everybody? No, it's not. Probably the most popular person who does the lion diet, and she talks about it all the time, is Mikhaila Peterson. This girl had such horrible issues with rheumatoid arthritis and other things like that. She had hip replacements, I believe, at the age of 16. She had multiple joint replacements before she was 21. That is how bad her body was. That's how bad of shape it was in. So she eventually cut everything out of her diet except for ruminant meat, salt, and water. That's it. And that's all she still consumes to this day. She's had 2 pregnancies eating this way, and both of her babies came out perfectly healthy and great. But that is what she needs to do for herself. Okay. So we've kind of gone the gamut from, 3 to 5 to 600 grams of carbs a day all the way down to 0. So which one is the best for me? Well, how do we know? You don't know until you start. The action I take with my clients is I want to see your baseline. I want to see how you're eating every single day for at least the first week. I need to see how you normally eat. No judgment, no yelling at you. I don't yell at my clients anyway. But I need to see what you're doing. I need to see where you're at right now without secrets. And then we gauge from there, okay, let's have a conversation. What are you comfortable doing? What are you comfortable giving up? What are your goals? And what are you willing to do to achieve those goals? Because if you've got type 2 diabetes, you're dealing with PCOS, you've got chronic joint pain, and you're depressed, I just described me back in 2020. What are you willing to cut to start reversing those conditions? What are you willing to do to put type 2 diabetes in remission? It's a great question. But that's something you have to answer. I can't answer that for you. I can help guide you along the path of what may be the best way of eating for you, but I can't tell you this is what you have to do. Now, once we have an established relationship and you're seeing changes and then they kind of start to, slow down or they come to a complete stop, we need to reevaluate. Is what you're eating right now sufficient for you to be able to continue on to lose fat, to build muscle, to hit those goals that you've got set for yourself? Are you still eating, 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrates a day? Yep. Okay. Maybe we need to take it down another notch. See what that does for you. Get those fat cells being utilized in your body again, instead of the sugars being utilized as fuel for your body. So it's always a matter of tweaks and experiments. That's why I always encourage people to not look at this as a race. This is a long-term thing. We are playing the long game. There is no end game with this. This is the rest of our lives. We're going to have ups, we're going to have downs, we're going to have plateaus, we're going to have gains, we're going to have massive drops. All of that's going to happen, and all of that should be expected. But if what you're doing right now is not working, what are you willing to change to get things going in the right direction again? That's how you know which diet plan, which diet is best for you. I started out with keto. I did keto for close to 2 years, and then I hit a 20-month stall. I was stalled for almost 2 full years. Well, let's start playing around with things. I hired a coach at that point, and I would do this up and down, the same 5 pounds for 20 months. I even bought the super expensive scale so that I could see, okay, wait, is this just because I'm gaining muscle? Am I losing fat? Well, guess what? The fat would go up, the muscle would go down, and then the muscle would go up, and the fat would go down, and guess it was that same 5 pounds for all that time. So I had to play around. I had to experiment. It was during this time I became a health coach myself. So I took what I learned in my training and I applied it to myself. I guess you could say I was my very first client. And doing that, I was able to figure out what I needed to do next. For me, it was cutting fat. I was still consuming too much fat. Go figure. I'm by no means low fat, but I am lower fat than I had been for a number of years. And then I started strength training. And guess what? That kicked things into high gear last year. And that broke my 20-month stall, which was a beautiful thing. Some of my clients benefit from consuming certain types of carbohydrates. I said in an interview, yesterday that I get crucified on certain carnivore influencer pages, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or whatever. I mean, they come after me because guess who gained weight doing 2 months of carnivore? And why was that? Well, I was still dealing with an eating disorder at that point. I was still a binge eater at that point. So when they are telling me, don't track your macros, it doesn't matter what you're eat as much as you want until you're comfortably stuffed. Those are the exact words that are used. Comfortably stuffed. This ED brain up here does not know when she is stuffed because she will continue eating. I mean, if you followed me back in the day, you'd see that I would have at least a 16-ounce steak plus eggs plus whatever else. I mean, my breakfast used to be ridiculous. I would have a pound of meat, a pound of ground beef or whatever other kind of meat, and 5 to 6 eggs because that's what these people were doing. And that's what they told me I needed to do because that's what was going to help me lose weight. And I gained. In 2 months, I gained 8 pounds because I was still eating too much. So I had to work on this right here before I could really start to hone in on my nutrition and do what was actually right for me during that time. Now, since then, everything has pivoted as well because I do still eat certain types of vegetables from time to time. I avoid a lot of them because they cause me bloating and I don't want to walk around with a stomach that sticks out because I ate a Brussels sprout with bacon in it. I will, during certain times of my cycle, so certain times of the month, I will have a sweet potato or a half a sweet potato with butter. It's not like I'm having sweet potato casserole with marshmallows and caramel sauce and all sorts of other crap in it. No, I'm having sweet potato because that helps me with certain things during certain times of my month. And that was, again, done experimenting. It's not saying this is what you do right now because this is what I do and this is what works for me. No, because what's working for me right now is not what would have worked for me 5 years ago. What worked for me 4 years ago no longer works for me. It is a constant evolution of how I eat based on my lifestyle changes, my activity levels, and my age. I am perimenopausal. So I do have to play around with how I eat because guess what? Low progesterone generally means you're not going to be dropping any fat. I would prefer to do it in a more natural way, but if I have to go and start utilizing some sort of BHRT, then I'll do that. But I would prefer to utilize food to heal my body. But unfortunately, I am at that age now where, my body and my brain and everything are just deciding that they're going to do what they want to do because yay, perimenopause. But it's okay because, if the change isn't happening, then that means I'm dead. And, I'd rather just continue on with this change and keep experimenting with my body. So basically, what I'm here to tell you is there are better ways of eating than what you're potentially doing right now. If you are eating a standard American diet and you're eating fast food on a regular basis, you are eating pastries all the time. I mean, I don't know how many times I go to people's homes and I see donuts and danishes and cookies and pies. It's just everywhere. And they wonder why they have issues. have you seen what's on your counters? Have you seen what's in your refrigerator? There's a really good possibility that those things are correlated. I will go and see tons of soda and tons of fruit juices and yogurts. And, we already talked about all the sugars, the hidden sugars and everything in kids' items and even things that adults eat. And you have to look at what you're eating. If you are eating a very high carbohydrate diet, dropping those carbs in half, they're going to help you. But you can't stay there. You then have to probably drop a little bit more. I would say the safest zone for most people, if you are still actively trying to lose fat, you want to stay absolutely below 100 grams of carbohydrates a day, maybe shoot for below 75 and see how that works out. If you hire a coach, work with them for what is going to work for you. They are going to be able to guide you on a better path than what you're on now. So that when you no longer have this coach guiding you, you can do it yourself and not have the worry that you're going to fail because you have in your head what you have to do. And you know that if you need to play around a little bit, that's okay. Just don't let yourself get completely off path. So, is there a better way of eating than another? No. You do what works for you. You utilize those carb counts that we went over. Stay away from that scary danger red zone of 300 plus, and then try and get yourself out of that 150 to 300 zone because that's still insidious weight gain danger. What is it? Roy Rogers, Will Rogers, whatever, somebody, and try and stick below 100 grams of carbs a day and see what it does. See how you feel. It's not just about the weight loss all the time. What other things are improving in your life? How do you feel? How is your sleep? How is your mental capacity? Do you have any physical aches and pains anymore? Do you have more energy? Do you have less brain fog? Are you happier? Those matter a lot more than the number on the scale. So, I will find the symptoms of metabolic syndrome, and I'll post those in here so that you guys have access to those. And I don't see that I've gotten any questions over here. Lots of people that came in and found me. They'll have to find the replay because they're babysitting. So yeah, if we have no questions tonight, then we will go ahead and end this live training. If you've got questions after watching this, please feel free to log them in the comment section. As you guys know, Facebook is deleting these videos after 30 days, so I will convert them to YouTube and have the link so that you guys can go back and watch them and share them with others too. But other than that, everybody have a fantastic rest of your Monday night, and I will see you next week. Bye.